We've genre dived down the multicolored walls of sci-fi, horror, crime, and, least controversially, westerns. But this week, it's time to get crazy. Coming at you in 2 parts, these are our picks for the 10 best action films of all time. First half of this, we wanted to look at some of the larger subgenres inside of the high adrenaline umbrella that is the cinematic world of action. Sorry, great action horrors, action romances, and action faith films, you're gonna have to find homes inside other categories. These are only for the biggies. And speaking of other things we aren't looking at today, superhero movies. We're saving them for a later list. But in terms of what we are looking at, first up is the action comedy. And my god, is it a feast of a category here. From Sherlock Jr., to 21 Jump Street, from Starship Troopers to Attack the Block, from Men in Black to Tropic Thunder, the good, the bad, and the weird to Why Don't You Play in Hell. There's an entire buddy comedy subgenre in here with movies like Lethal Weapon 2, Bad Boys, 48 Hours, and The Nice Guys. We freaking love the work of Stephen Chow, especially his Kung Fu Hustle and Journey to the West, of Edgar Wright, especially in his never-bested action parody Hot Fuzz, and all of Jackie Chan's lighter work. And we went back and forth on a number of films from all 3 of these action comedy artisans, but at the end of the day, there was just an irrepressible special place in our hearts for the legend of the Drunken Master.
Here is a very last bottle!
You get up! What the hell is that?
What does it mean when there's a picture of a skull?
Oh, good stuff!
Drunken Master 2 is about as brilliant an action comedy as there ever could be, and we've talked about it before, notably its final fight scene. But almost every single moment of combat, and there are lots, puts most other action comedies to shame. And that's because it manages to sit astride both of its hyphenate subgenre components, as an action movie and a comedy, such that one side strengthens the other. The action makes the comedy better and vice versa. It isn't a good action film at the expense of being a good comedy, and it isn't alternately funny and full throttle. It is both together at the same time, driven by the exact same engine. This average martial artist gets better the more drunk he gets, and the more drunk he gets, the better the action becomes. The more absurd the whole thing is, the more we're laughing. It's an action comedy perfect storm, which is why it's the true gem of the subgenre. Let's turn now to the science-fictionalized world of action, where the best examples will be those that use the peculiarities of future tech to expand the creativity of their carnage. Here we find Snowpiercer and Escape from New York, alongside Edge of Tomorrow and Inception and Minority Report and Upgrade. And look, it wasn't a perfect movie, but recently Alita had some pretty awesome action in it. But standing atop the subgenre, we find 3 clear standouts that we spent an uncomfortable amount of time going back and forth between. They are Aliens, The Matrix, and our number 9 pick, Terminator 2: Judgment Day.
Get down.
Much like Drunken Master, T2 straddles both its subgenre elements in a way that maximizes their synergy.
It sets up its story premise with time travel, develops its combat with robot-on-robot badassery, and even fleshes out its human moments through the improbable pairing of boy and AI guardian. And every single one of these elements works perfectly. Terminator was already a fantastic action film, but in T2, the set pieces are second to none. Arnie has never had a better role, and oh god, is the T-1000 a perfectly engineered villain. T2 was earth-shattering in an era of action movies breaking ground, combining ingenious practical effects with ILM's latest wizardry with an endless watchability that endures to this day. Next up, we look to the best of the war films.
We get to mostly skate past incredible non-starters that aren't quite action-y enough, like Apocalypse Now,
The Deer Hunter, and Paisan, and on to films like Battle of Britain, Platoon, Lone Survivor, and Cross of Iron. We find excellent half-actions in the form of Zero Dark 30, The Hurt Locker, and especially Saving Private Ryan. In different times and places, we find excellent war action in Braveheart, 300, and Ran. But for our third pick on this list, and by action movie criteria alone, we actually think no one has done it better than Ridley Scott in Black Hawk Down.
Juliet 2-5, hostiles advancing parallel west to your position. Be advised, women and children among them. Over.
Let's just set aside what are some legitimate questions about representation so we can focus on what Black Hawk Down does right, the action.
And fortunately for us, there's about 2 solid hours of it. It is essentially a near constant cascade of battles and skirmishes punctuated by the occasional brief dialogue. And each successive set piece is as awesome as it is Scott Brothers colorful. Scott manages the rare feat of engaging you at the level of the strategic, in the command tent watching the map change from the height of the helicopter, of the tactical, seeing how various chocks work together to address challenges and tackle obstacles in creative, team-driven ways, and in the individual, feeling for each exchange of bullets and soldier injured. It is an astonishingly complicated balancing act that only very occasionally manages not to juggle all 3 balls at once across its entire length, sustaining a constant, nerve-wracking tension and rhythm of serious adrenaline all the while. Next, we turn to action-adventure. But first, what really is action-adventure? It's honestly hard to say, and we're not entirely sure. But you know it when you see it. You know it's going to take you somewhere exciting.
You know it's going to be a little funny along the way, and most of the time it's not rated R.
It's The Mummy and Pirates of the Caribbean. It's The Adventures of Robin Hood and The Great Escape, and definitely North by Northwest in its earliest forms. It's Star Wars and Jurassic Park and maybe The Fugitive and definitely Raiders of the Lost Ark. But we think you can find adventurous action at its absolute best in the recent Mad Max Fury Road. Is even one bad thing to say about George Miller's high-octane crowning jewel. Conceived visually from go with panels rather than words, cutting-edge CGI well hidden amidst real practical mayhem that harkens back to the best parts of an earlier era of filmmaking, vast in its creativity and world-building that suggests backstory and consequences extending far beyond the runtime and frame, the latest Mad Max truly is a masterpiece of action. There is such unbelievable attention to detail in its rhythm and to eye trace that Miller seems to magically guide your attention to just the right things for just the right amount of time for maximum coherence. There are about 10,000 things happening at once, yet you never once lose track. There is a mastery of craft on display here that is rare indeed, and it doesn't hurt either that the character and the story that craft is being employed to illustrate happen to be certifiably batshit awesome. Rounding out the first half of our list, we want to take our intermission only after a fitting first act climax at the epic action film, with the size and scale and volume all turned up to 11, combining the vastness of the adventure film with the conflict size of the war film. And there aren't a ton of films that can pull this off, but the ones that do are those like Alexander Nevsky, The Seahawk, Ben-Hur, Lawrence of Arabia, The Lord of the Rings, and Gladiator. The Gangs of Wasseypur absolutely belongs in this part of the conversation as the Bollywood action film answer to The Godfather, as does Love Exposure for its length and tonal scope alone. However, to cap things off for today, we don't think there's a better made, more exciting, and forever enduring action film than The Seven Samurai. talking about Kurosawa's seminal samurai film here on Cinefix Movie Lists. It does just about everything you'd ever want an epic to do and how. It's got comedy, drama, romance, action, adventure, pathos, heartbreak, team building, plan making, entire village training, Kikuchiyo's bare buns, show-stopping skirmishes, and a rain-soaked final battle sequence that's shot simply and clearly and without VFX, and yet still manages some all-time great levels of excitement. It's all the complex whole-team action dramatics of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe in one single movie. It's got one of cinema's best heroic journeys, and it's our pick for one of the best action films of all time. Part 1. So what do you think? Disagree with any of our picks? Did we leave out any of your favorite action films? Let us know in the comments below so we can steal all your ideas and claim them as our own in Part 2. And be sure to subscribe for more Cinefix Movie Lists. For real, just kidding about stealing your ideas. We already wrote it.